after Stanford, I went to, for 1 year, the graduate school of international studies in Geneva, Switzerland. And there were two, in the home we were living in where we had apartments, there were two, or rather one, Portuguese guy from Portugal who was studying medicine and wanted to learn French in particular. And I was with my Stanford roommate in Geneva, and we went to Portugal a year later for vacation, and we left the hotel the first day to go change money, and the only person we knew in Portugal was this guy who was studying to be a doctor, and we ran into him within a half hour of leaving the hotel. I mean, it's just scary sometimes. And then when we were in Geneva, was the Hungarian Revolution, and I guess one of the things that caused me to get into this business is that we snuck into Hungary to see a revolution, which we never should have done ever, but we got out all right. But you know, we thought it was just a lark until we crossed the border and saw what we'd bitten off more than we could chew. So that was it was something, fortunately, none of our parents knew beforehand, but it worked.
Well, since you brought it up, what did you see? What do you remember of the Hungarian Revolution?
What did I see in Hungary during the revolution? Well, that's a little bit of a longer story. When we went to, when we heard about the Hungarian Revolution, if you're in a country, as we were in Geneva, and you do get caught in any political demonstration, you could be, you know, your visa can be nullified. And we got caught in when we'd gone downtown Geneva to see this demonstration, and there was a huge gathering, and the police started a cordon around, you know, to draw the group together. And we saw what was happening and got out of it very quickly, but and that was a close escape, we felt. So we decided that we would we would go to Vienna and see how all this flow of refugees was being handled. So we got together with a couple of girls from Smith College and some guys, and we rode 22 hours on the train in, what was it, October, to Vienna. And in French, it's Le Sifflet is the connecting between the cars. We sat on, for 22 hours, we sat on our suitcases. And that was the only place. There were no seats. Everybody was going to Vienna to see what they could do to help. So we got to Vienna, and we had, that's when credit cards just started being used. And my Stanford roommate's father had given her an American Express card, and she was the only one among us who had a credit card. And so we looked up what used the credit card in Vienna, and turned out it was probably the most expensive hotel in Vienna. So there we were at the Kaiser and Elizabeth in Vienna, and then we were hungry. We had nothing to eat really for 22 hours, and all we wanted was something like sauerkraut and sauerbraten and something, and someplace. And we discovered there was a restaurant right across the alley, sort of from the hotel. Just a little hole in the wall. So we went to the restaurant, only to discover that you don't eat dinner in Vienna at 6 o'clock at night. You eat at 9 o'clock or after. Anyway, we went in, and we were clad in loafers and knee socks and button-down Oxford things, and camel's hair coats, and this place we walked into, and it was brocade drapes, and we realized we were way over our head. So we were turning around to leave, and the maitre d' came out, and he said, "Look, no one in Vienna eats at this hour. If you want something to eat, come on in." And so we sat down, and we told him that we wanted some sauerbraten and a beer or something, and he said, "That's kitchen fare. We don't do that kind of thing here." So anyway, then he found out what we were trying to do. And he said, "You cannot," he was suddenly our self-appointed father, and he said, "You cannot do that. You cannot go there. You have to get off the Austrian train at the border, because the gauge of the railroad is totally different, and get onto a Hungarian train, and you don't want to go there. And he said, if you do that, you know, I can see you're probably going to do it anyway. Please call your embassy before you go. So the next morning, we called the embassy, and they said, whatever you do, don't go. Your passports are not good for travel in Hungary. But if you do go, do not take a camera. Do not take pictures. And, you know, there's a whole list of do nots, which we all did. And so we went out and got in a taxi to go to the train station. At the same time, the maitre d' was arriving at the restaurant. He said, I knew you were going to do this. He said, if you get back safely, come and have dinner it was called the Three Hussars, was the name of the restaurant. And so we got out to the border, and we got on the train. And the other two people who got on the train were two armed people who stood at each end with their guns, each end of the train, the unit that we were in, and no one else, just us. And obviously, we looked idiotic. And so I had a Zeiss camera, which I could get up my camel's hair sleeve, and I tried to take a picture as soon as we crossed the border, and it sounded like I was cocking a gun, so that wasn't going to work. So somebody I was going with at the times who was had a great imagination said, "You're going to get sick. I'm going to take you to the WC, to the restroom, and we'll put the window down there and take pictures out the window, but we'll both go into the restroom." So I had to act like I was sick, and Mark then took me down the corridor, and we went in and locked ourselves in the John and took these pictures and then as we went through train station after train station and we saw guns and tanks, we realized that we were being pretty foolish. So anyway, the long and short of it is we managed to get ourselves turned around later in the day and go back the way we'd come. And when we arrived back in town, we dressed appropriately and went to the restaurant and had a very nice dinner, and felt very relieved by the whole thing.